Thank you guys for joining the March California Horticultural Society meeting. A little later, we'll have Ken Blackford. Go ahead and start. I have a couple announcements and stuff, so welcome again. Ken Blackford will have the continuation of his October meeting on the amaryllids, and he's added some things to it, so we'll enjoy seeing that in a few minutes. And then just want to let everybody know that if you guys have ordered seeds, that Dave will be mailing them out by the end of the month, so they'll should be coming to you a little bit later than that. And again, I want to thank Dave for going to all that. Since COVID, he's been doing it all himself, so it's a huge undertaking. So that's really appreciated. Like I keep saying, it was a great seed list this year. And then Bart is being honored by the American Horticultural Society for his significant lifetime contributions to, I'm not sure which three, he has quite a few of these, the following horticultural fields: teaching, research, communications, plant exploration, administration, art, business, and leadership.
I'd say all of them.
Probably, huh? Yes, I would think so. It's
I think he did every one of those.
well deserved for sure. And then thank you, Charlotte, myself, Ken, Saxon, Beryl, and Judy for contributing to the plant forum this evening. And if you want to contribute next month, April 17th at 5 p.m., send them over. And you can send them any time throughout the month, whatever's most convenient, but by 5 on Sunday. And then there's some announcements at the end. We will go ahead and start Ken's presentation. Ken is in San Diego and has been hybridizing and growing seeds of amaryllis, and used to work at the Ruth Bancroft Garden. I don't know how long ago was that.
Almost 30 years was when I started there. So.
I'll stop sharing my screen and then you can have the floor.
So most of what I'm going to say today is, or present today, are the non-amarylid South African bulbs. And I'm not doing these in any particular order, but Veltheimia alphabetically is towards the end. It's one of my favorites. They're related to hyacinths. They are generally winter growers, although Veltheimia bracteata you can keep green in a shaded position if you give it some summer water. But the foliage doesn't look really great. It's better to just let it go dry, in my opinion.
Are these particular shade plants, or will they go in shade or sun?
They will grow in full sun, at least here. I'm sort of coastal, and they grow in full sun. The leaves look greener in shade. If the yellow one, the lemon flame, that's in generally a shady location. You can see the leaves are darker green. So in full sun, the leaves will kind of burn a little bit. So, and bracteata is mostly shades of pink. There can be apricot, and there's some darker pink ones that approach red. Some people like to say red, but they're not really red. And then there's a yellow race. The one I picked up, probably close to 20 years ago, was called Lemon Flame, and that's the yellow one that's presented there in the upper right.
To go for eat the bulbs?
No, they don't seem to bother these. Just like my amaryllids, they don't touch the amaryllids, and they've never bothered these either. So, been lucky. The other species within the Veltheimia genus is Geophytes. It's also a winter growing bulb, but it is a fall blooming as opposed to spring blooming for bracteata. So it's kind of nice to see these blooms in the fall. They pop up. If you start watering in September, they will grow and they'll be flowering by the end of the month. If I wait for the natural rains to come, they won't flower until after that starts. And sometimes that's not until January here. So.
Carl asks to please mention any that are attractive to California native pollinators.
Well, I was looking at the yellow flame today, and well, that's not a native pollinator, the honeybee. So I don't know. And then Lachenalia is a common South African bulb, also in the hyacinth family. Very easy to grow, almost weedy in pots. However, my problem here, the ones that I've tried to grow in the ground, tend to be mollusk magnets. and they will disappear overnight, even if I've done a very good job of, reducing the snail count in my garden. They seem to come out of nowhere. So just about every color in the rainbow for Lachenalias. The leaves can be spotted or they can be plain green. Sometimes they're covered with bumps, tubercles. This one, these blue Lachenalias seem to be the most prolific. The one on the left is Lachenalia violacea, and I've had that volunteer, but the one in the middle and in the upper right and lower right is probably a form of Lachenalia postulata, or it could be another species. I'd have to look at my book. But very prolific. They come up in all my pots. They have tiny little seeds, smaller than a poppy seed, that seem to get windblown. And they germinate in the pots. I think they may be germinating in the ground too, but I suspect what's happening in the ground is a slug or a snail finds them immediately and devours them. And the albucas are a nice genus, I think. Small, usually small, although there are some very tall ones up to 3 or 4 feet. This one I bought years ago. I have in the ground. It hasn't really multiplied, but I enjoy the spiral leaves, and it attracts. I have it growing next to my sidewalk, and a lot of people will stop and say, "What the heck is that?" Yellow flowers, kind of smells like vanilla, although it doesn't permeate the area. So. And then another albuca species is Albuca spiralis, for a pretty appropriate name. This one also attracts a lot of comments from my neighbors. And it volunteers. I have it coming up between the stones, not to the point of being weedy, but it does volunteer. So. And another albuca species. This one's very commonly available. I don't know quite how to say that. I would say Agrave Hills on the left. And it's a nice one. That one also smells like vanilla, but you have to put your nose up close. And then the middle one was just a pot of Albuca circinata that somebody was showing at one of the plant shows. And I think it won some award. And then on the right is that's my pot of Hymanthus, which is an Amaryllid, Hymanthus deformis. And I just put this picture in there because I'm showing the Albuca spiralis that somehow got into that pot and has volunteered, and it squeezes its way out from those fat leaves of the Hymanthus. Massonia is a really easy species. I think it's probably more grown for the leaves, although I find the flowers interesting. The leaves are often streaked with purple or maroon. Sometimes, quite often with these bumps or pustules, and they're really pretty. I think they tend to be better off as a pot plant. If you put them in the ground, you need to put them somewhere where the snails can't get to them, like on an elevated position. I have a big pot I've sort of half planted in the ground, and I think that might be a good choice as well. They are winter growers. They die back, and they produce. They volunteer also. And the seed heads are developing in that one in the upper right hand corner. And when they dry up, I don't know how they get distributed, but they do. They pop up in all my other pots. So very tiny seeds, like poppy seeds. And you all know that one, the common calla lily on the left. This one volunteered in my yard under the drip line of the house. They seem to like a little more moist conditions. I used to see this volunteering in ditches in various places up north in the Bay Area quite commonly. Is that still the case?
I don't think so. I don't.
No?
really seen any, no.
Oh, okay.
I've seen it in dry shade.
They do better in shade, yeah.
They're
The ones
common
that-
on the coast of Marin. They're common along the coast.
Oh.
of Marin. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
I bet where it's, fog is common, and there's moist conditions along a stream bed, they probably do very well there. I remember seeing them common. And then the Ornithogalum dubium, that's a pretty common variety available. You'll see it at Home Depot. Sometimes it's yellow, sometimes it's orange. That's the dubium species name. And Ornithogalum clavatum, I think it used to be called Galtonia or pseudo-Galtonia. It's a less common species. This picture is not mine. That was taken at the LA Arboretum in Arcadia. But I grew Galtonia when I lived in Concord, and it did fine. I had no problems, except it's a winter grower, and the leaves look kind of ragged by May and June. And there are a lot of different kinds of Freesias. I have the common yellow one. I've forgotten the species off the top of my head, but this red one it's almost weedy. It pops up all over my yard, but I find it very pretty, and it's Freesia laxa. And the seed pods, or when they open up, are kind of pretty too. There are these bright red or maroon shiny seeds. I just have to try to get out there before they fall, because they germinate everywhere. And then likewise with Ixia, there are many species. I had this purple one that I bought, and it turned into a nice clump, upright leaves. They're in the iris family. And it's reseeded, but the seedlings came up with the white and maroon edges to it. So there was some variation there. And Eucomus is not really a winter grower. Well, there is one species that is a winter grower. I have not had much luck with it. These were taken, well, one of them was taken in my yard, the one in the upper right-hand corner in a shaded position. Oh, actually the middle one is taken in my yard too. Pineapple flowers is the common name for obvious reasons. There's a beautiful display of them at UC Berkeley Botanic Gardens. Get a chance to go there in the spring, a little bit later in the spring, May or June. There's just a fantastic display.
Ken, can I share a tip I got from David Fikes about those?
Sure.
Yeah, he told me you can cut back the foliage, when it starts to get ratty, and it will replace itself with all, and since the foliage is probably the nicest part of it, for the look of the plant, that was kind of a good thing to know.
Yeah, especially the maroon foliage. It really sets the plant apart. Yeah. It does need water though in the summer, right?
Yeah.
Has that been your experience?
I give it a little.
Yeah. Yeah. Not a lot, but it to stay green here anyways, it needs water.
Yeah. And
there are some more irids that are common in South Africa. Casmanthe floribunda. There's a yellow form too, very pretty, very weedy, at least here in San Diego County. So I would, if you want to grow it, it's spectacular, but I would cut the flowers before they turn to seed and dispose of them so they don't spread the seed around. And then Saxon had some Spiraxis. I've grown those too. They're nice. Crocosmia is not a winter grower. That requires a little bit of summer water. I used to see it quite frequently up in the Bay Area, so I think it was common up there in gardens. And Babiana is, I have mixed feelings about Babiana. I like the blue and I like the red. I think the leaves tend to go a little ratty looking and half brown, usually by the time they start to flower. But if you can overlook that negative aspect, they're interesting.
Ken, Dan Arcos asks, how long do the Albuquerque take to flower from seed?
Well, it probably depends on the species. The smaller ones, spiralis, will bloom by the second year. Yeah, for me, anyways. The ones that volunteer in the ground, yeah, it's usually the second year. So.
And then Jim Bishop is telling a little story about Freesia that came with a bulb Ken gave me 4 years ago. Later, I have at least 50. He says.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jim. you got to cut those seed heads off before they develop, before they ripen. So.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to get them to grow in the neighbor's grass, the native grass next door. That's where I.
Oh, there you go. Except they'll find their way back into your yard and all the other yards too.
It's up. It's downwind. It's the wrong way.
Oh, good, good. And then a mix. I threw Tobagia in here, fragrans, and oops, that's an Amaryllid. So, and I like bird of paradise. The I don't know how to say it, Juncea species, which just has these leafless stems or reeds for leaves. This picture is it's not looking too good. My complaint about bird of paradise is you have to weed out the old flowers to keep it looking good. They also get too big, so they have to be cut back quite a bit. And Merwilla plumbea or Scilla natalensis, same thing. That picture is actually up there at Berkeley Botanic Gardens. I've grown it here and it seems to shrink a little bit each year. So I'm doing something wrong. I'm probably not giving it enough water. The first couple of years, my specimen looked like this, but it dwindled down to one head and now it hasn't even flowered. So. And the Watsonia species, that was actually a shot in Mission Hills here in San Diego. Comes in many colors. It's another Irid. They kind of look like gladiola to me, which is another South African bulb. And there are many species of gladiola that can be grown. I haven't gotten into them yet myself. So.
Is the Merwilla a baby blue, like it looks like?
It is. It's beautiful, or almost Wedgwood blue.
Mm.
Yeah, it's really pretty.
And then Richard Starkison says, Procosmia is very weedy in the Bay Area.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't realize that. I remember seeing it in yards. I didn't see it volunteering where I didn't think it belonged, but I can believe that, especially if it gets irrigated. I think it's from the Eastern Cape, so it likes summer water. The problems, and I'm going to go back to some of the amaryllids, is the declining foliage. This is a problem with a lot of them. A lot of the winter growers, you know, in spring they start to go dormant, and you have this situation, which is not too appealing. But you got to resist pulling up those dead leaves, let them go almost completely brown, and then you can remove them, because while they're still green, they're returning energy to the bulb. So these here are Brunsvigias. This is a real problem here in San Diego. Mosaic virus, it's the same virus that affects tobacco plants. And you'll get this uneven variegation or broken variegation on the leaves. And as soon as you see that, if you see it, you got to get rid of the plant, because snails, mealybug, aphids, anything that might land on one of them can spread this to another bulb. And it's usually curtains for that bulb anyways. It'll decline, and it won't die right away, but if you leave it in place, you risk the chance of spreading the virus. It's the coronavirus of the plant world. This is back with the amaryllids, Brunsvigias. These bulbs declined because they were in too shady a position. which probably made them more susceptible to other pathogens as well. And I cut through the bulb, and yeah, there was rot in the middle. So, and this is a problem y'all probably have seen. Chewing insects. It's like they were beautiful the day before, and you go out there the next morning and you go, ah, what happened? And you look around for the bug and you can't find the damn thing. Sorry. Propagation for the amaryllids, usually 3 to 10 years. For the Lachenalias, I had Lachenalias bloom the same year they germinate, and they're winter growers, so they would germinate in the fall if we get a good fall rain, and they will bloom in the spring. Freesia, almost the same. I've had those bloom the first year from seed. Ixia, I haven't monitored them close enough. Massonia, 2 years. The amaryllis, some of them, the belladonna varieties and the hybrids, tend to offset prolifically, as does Certanthus falcatus. I think I showed a picture of that in the first presentation. And Veltheimia generally not quite as fast, but it will divide. The bulbs will divide and make offsets. So. Whereas Brunsvigias tend to be very slow or no offsets whatsoever. I originally ordered my seed. This is one of the sources from Silver Hill in South Africa. I believe they're still in business. The owners suffered a real, they were kidnapped in South Africa and murdered. But from what I understand is somebody else has taken over the reins there, and they're still in business. Oh, this is the lazy man's way to pollinate with a paintbrush. Those were the Buffon disticas. A better way to pollinate, requiring more attention and detail, is to remove an individual stamen with the anthers intact and with right pollen on it, and touch the individual stigmas. And when I do this, I get much better seed production. And you can do crosses. The yellow flower was a Buaphinae hymenthoides, and the pink ones are Buaphinae distica. And then you employ cheap labor to help with the harvest. I just put this in here. That was my cute niece. She's from China. She was visiting, and she was studying, and she thought the seeds from the Buaphinae distica were beans. I said, no, don't eat them. They're probably poisonous. And then I usually do this kind of anal retentive thing where I display the seeds only for myself for the harvest. And I take pictures of them, and I like them to be in order, kind of crazy. And then when you grow them on, it's easier to grow them in community pots, which is the lower picture on the left. And then usually the first year you want to, and this would be true of all the different species, you want to divide them up or pot them up individually. Information sources. This is over a picture of Albuquerque. I still have these books. My favorite there is the Cape Bulbs by Richard Doubt. That's 30 years old. But still good information. All the others are good information sources as well. So. And then some online information sources, Pacific Horticulture. I don't know if Sean O'Hara is out there or not. I know he's a big advocate. And the Pacific Bulb Society has a fantastic wiki of pictures and information about not just South African bulbs, just about every bulb, every geophyte out there. It's worth a visit to that site. And then locally here in California also is Diana Chapman, who posts a blog called The Bulb Maven. There's usually some interesting bits of information you get there. not just South African bulbs, but she does those as well. And then more digital sources online. I'm a big Facebook junkie, especially with the different groups that are focused on different bulb genera. And there's a lot of those that are focused, on one specific genus. Really informal, but good information. And of course, the public gardens, you can go to UC Berkeley. San Francisco Botanic Gardens has a nice display in their South African section. Ruth Bancroft Garden, Huntington, if you make it down to Southern California, and the LA State and County Arboretum. San Diego Botanic Garden is coming along. It's smaller. And UC Santa Cruz Arboretum is pretty fantastic. I've only visited there twice, but it's pretty impressive. Maybe some of you have visited there. Seed and bulb sources. There's Telos Rare Bulbs. Again, that's Diana Chapman out of Ferndale in Northern California. Bill, the bulb baron, used to sell amaryllids. He died from cancer a couple years ago, and Jamie Colliard, that's a woman, and Aaron James Schnebley are running the show there now. And they're trying to get up to speed, and he had huge growing grounds of not only South African amaryllids, but a lot of daffodils and a few other species. And he's in, their growing grounds were in Moss Landing. I believe they sell at some of the farmers markets in the South Bay. Plant club sales are always good, although they may be hit and miss, from month to month. Botanic garden sales events are often good sources. And friends and Facebook. If you see something on Facebook, say something nice, friend that, ask them where they got the plant or where you might get seed, and likely they may volunteer to send you some. And then I did add a little section about companion plants. This is a Leucospermum in my yard. I don't have any bulbs under it right now, but I have limbed it up this year. It's just beginning to flower this year. This is a shot from last year. And there is room underneath to plant some bulbs. So that would be a good one. And it's South African as well, so it kind of maintains the theme. I'm kind of a design deficient plant nerd, and I like one of everything, and a few of the things that multiples of the ones that are favorites. But my underlying requirement is drought tolerance, which a lot of the geophytes are. So for companion plants, other South African species, if you're going with the South African bulbs, they kind of make a logical choice. So I'm sharing a few that I've incorporated around my plantings. Aloes, or more recently, some of the tree aloes have been reclassified as aloedendrons. I'm a real fan of one that's a hybrid called Hercules, and it grows very fast. The picture on the lower left is actually one at Ruth Bancroft Garden. So that's a little older. It may grow a little slower up in the Bay Area. She had that planted. It was just a stem, maybe 2 feet tall, when I left in 1998. And then the next shot is in my front yard. I have 3 that were all grown via tissue culture at Rancho Soledad Nurseries down here in Southern California. And I bought them in a 6-inch pot, and there were 4 little 6-inch plants. I bought that pot in 2010 and planted them in the ground in 2011, 2013, and 2015, the smaller one being 2015. And then you can plant South African geophytes underneath them. That's a Buophone distica underneath one of the Aloe Hercules. And the one on the left is my oldest one, which I grew from a 18-inch cutting I purchased from Bill Baker in 2002. This one receives no summer water whatsoever. And you can, other arborescent aloes are also good to plant under and can provide winter color. I think all of these, except for the one in the lower right, may be hardy in the Bay Area. Maybe not the coldest parts. If you're in a cold sink, that could be problematic. But generally, they should be pretty hardy. The one in the lower right is Aloe tongaensis, which is more of a tropical species, but it does well here in San Diego. So that one's taken in Mission Hills. That's not in my yard. And the middle one, Aloe diconda, Allodendron dichotoma, that's in Balboa Park here. So I've been following that plant since I moved out here. So for 24 years. And then maybe some of the less common plants that you could incorporate. Deciduous trees can be good to plant under, especially for the winter growers when they get the light. They go dormant in the summer and they don't really need the light. The Oncarina is the yellow one. That's a Decarii that was taken at Los Angeles Arboretum. And I was really enthralled with that. And I bought a little seedling, which turns out to be a hybrid, and it doesn't bloom quite the same. It blooms when the leaves come out. I want it to bloom before the leaves come out. But it's still interesting. And then the Tylicodons make kind of a shrub. A lot of people think they're ugly, but they are winter growers also. So about the same cultural requirements, water in the winter, dry in the summer. And then this final shot in the lower right is just a precocious Brunsvigia josephini flower. I think that was the first year it flowered at about 7 years, which was, for that species, is quick. They usually take 10 years to get to bloom size. I don't grow many of them anymore because they do take too long. Brunsvigia littoralis, which is almost similar, blooms much quicker. I've had them bloom in as little as 3 years from seed. Crassulas, the more arborescent ones, can be underplanted with South African bulbs. The one on the left has become very common here in Southern California. I don't know if you see it up north. It's a variety called Blue Waves, Aloe arborescens Blue Waves. And then the middle one is the common Crassula ovata. Excuse me, Crassula arborescens is the one in the middle. I get these two mixed up all the time. And the one above is the common jade, Crassula ovata. And if you limb them up, you can plant things underneath them. The other thing you could do is you could raise a plant in a pot and then plant around it, which I've actually done with that Medusa head euphorbia. This shot was taken just as I redid that particular bed, so the bulbs aren't showing yet. And Kalanchoe bayarensis is a small tree that's sparse on the bottom, so it allows light to go through. That's a good one. Although I believe this is actually Madagascaran, but it does well here. And this should do well up in the Bay Area as well. And then you've probably all seen Melianthus major up in the Bay Area. I remember it was pretty common up there. It will grow tall, and you can underplant beneath it. And the reason I like it, a lot of people object to the smell of the leaves. I find it kind of attractive. Smells like peanut butter to me. But the flowers are very attracted to birds. Here brings in the orioles and the warblers. You can also plant certain ground covered types over the bulbs. The one in the lower left is a geranium incanum, which volunteered after our first heavy rains in December I don't know where that came from, but I let it grow. Here it's growing right at the edge of the sidewalk, and it's growing out. Bulbs will grow through it, but here it's covering up some of my other plants, which I don't want to happen, so I'm going to have to trim it back. The middle shot is Crassula pruinosa. Again, bulbs will grow up through that, some of the larger bulbs. But I like to plant it on the side because I like it uninterrupted. So. And then Crassula pubescens, subspecies rupestris, turns red in the sun. I like to plant that as an adjoining plant around some of my bulbs. It can grow right up to it and they'll grow through it. And that's the last shot. Any questions?
Nice, nice, nice.
Thank you.
There's a couple questions on the chat. Robbie Rednauer asks how long are the seeds viable, but I'm not sure which one she's talking about. Bobby?
Yeah, I think it was back when you had the crocosmias and those slides.
Crocosmia, I'm not sure how long those would be viable. I would guess probably a few years. The amaryllids are all recalcitrant seeds. They will germinate whether you want them to not the first year. So you cannot keep them beyond more than a few months usually. Some people might stretch that to 4 or 5 months.
Huh. Okay.
But it's pretty tough.
Thanks.
Okay, and then Carl Meyer asks, which are frost tolerant, but I'm not sure exactly which plant he's talking about. Carl?
Ground covers.
Well, that geranium, I think, is probably fairly frost tolerant, but it would not take a freeze like we had in 1990 up there, as a lot of these plants wouldn't.
But they need afternoon shade up here. How about the bulbs?
The bulbs, for the most part, like sun. Many of them will tolerate some light. It probably depends on whether you're inland or closer to the coast, just like it is here. If you're in a cold sink, I'm in a cold sink, and we get pretty chilly. But my coldest temp here is 30.
I'm inland. We're down to 24 to 26 most of the time, occasional 19.
When I lived in Concord, that wasn't generally a problem. Again, going back to 1990, it stayed down around, it got down to 15 degrees for 3 nights in a row, and it never got above freezing. I don't know if any of you remember that. And a lot of my plants bit the dust. They couldn't handle it. But a normal winter where mid to upper 20s is your low, you know, for a couple hours each night, couple to 6 hours, that's generally not a problem. There are probably some species that are a little more tender. The spring blooming
Crassless, for example, or pretty tender, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You have to be careful if you're in the East Bay, inland East Bay. I had them growing under the drip line of trees, and they had no problem whatsoever. And a lot of my neighbors had them growing under the eaves of their house, no problem whatsoever, except for 1990. Everything melted in 1990. So.
Ouch. Okay, well, thank you, Ken. You have a great presentation because you give us a lot of information, which is very helpful in doing these types of plants. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Learned a lot.
Mark has opened his garden.
Thanks to Judy for getting me off my lazy butt and watching it go to hell for 2 years and not fixing anything that needed fixing. So I'm pretty excited to see it looking better. Although right now things are knocked back a little bit and clearing things away to do. But if you came for the Western Hort Tour back on the 13th of March, it'll be a little different. The white Mataren's geranium will be more in bloom, and it's pretty showy.
So Saturday, April 16th, mark it on your day before Easter, 10 to 11:30. And we're hoping maybe we get some more gardens in this area to visit. Mark asks that you RSVP either by email or text, and then include your name, whether you're a member of Cal Hort or Western Hort, and then names of any guests you want to bring. You're requesting everybody wear masks, correct?
I figured since we're outside, I'll have one around my neck and I'll bring it up if I find myself getting into a tight clump of people. Because my wife is vulnerable, so to protect her, I'm going to mask if I feel a little bit, too close. Other than that, I think it's big and there's a lot of room to move around. And if you are only close with the people that you are usually with, it's probably okay.
Okay, wonderful. We're excited to come visit.
Your garden was looking fabulous a couple weeks ago, so it'll just get better and better.
Things will, yeah, exactly. The roses will be hitting pretty soon. So there's a lot of buds out there. So we'll see. It'll either be all over the ground or it'll be all over the vine. We'll see.
And then next month, we're going to have Megan Ray, the garden manager from Blake Garden. Blake Garden is a wonderful little garden, and I think it's in Kensington, isn't it?
I think so.
And it's only open Monday through Friday, but it's a wonderful garden. And it's, I think it's, I had kind of forgotten about it until someone mentioned it, and I went over there and it was just amazing. I just love, it was all misty and stuff. And she has several programs that you can do, and I want some feedback on what you guys would like to hear about. There's fragrant plants in the garden. They have one of the sections in the garden is all fragrant plants, and then they have she has a program on different eras in history: Roman or Chinese scholar gardens, English 18th century, and I think there was Roman. Oh yeah, Roman there. And then, or the history of the Blake Garden and its designers, Anita Blake and Mabel Symes, which were evidently very early members of Cal Hort, which is kind of a tie there. And then she has one that's witness trees, and it's trees that stand as living symbols to human events, which that's kind of intriguing as well. So any discussion on what you guys would like to hear about next month?
Did you say that garden is open during the week, Monday through Friday?
And it's part of UC Berkeley, and evidently it's part of their landscape design, and they have plant identification. A lot of interesting plants in there.
Yeah, Ellen, I've photographed that garden many times over the many years. It's ostensibly the house for the chancellor. It's the official house of the chancellor. The landscape architecture department has been running it for many years. I know May Arbogast was instrumental in some of its design. The Western garden, the Mediterranean garden, is fantastic. It's really old and mature, and the specimens go really well together. It's a classic garden. It's only open during the week, 9 to 5. It's it's a private residence for the chancellor. Most chancellors choose not to live there. I don't know about the current chancellor, but it's owned by UC, and the landscape architecture department has used it for as long as I know. It's really quite a place.
It's kind of fun. They have, I think some of them have done projects for because there's like some interesting benches, and like on the right there, that's a bee house kind of sculpture kind of thing. They have a couple places there. They have interesting, either supports or garden kind of wall type things made out of sticks and stuff. And then they have a section where kids can go in and build stuff out of reeds or sticks or stuff, which would be fun if you're a kid to try to create in that kind of environment. Can't climb the tree though. It definitely says don't climb the tree.
Oh, a plug also for those of us with 4-footed kids. It's one of the few gardens you can bring a dog in on leash, as long as it's well behaved, and you keep them on that leash and clean up after them. But it's a great way to get a walk too. It's just beautiful.
Okay, I'm taking tolls right in your comments. I've got 3. I've got 2 for witness trees and 1 for fragrant. Any other thoughts?
Does it require reservations or?
No, it's open.
Nope. Just walk right in.
But you can get locked in.
Oh.
If you don't leave by 4:30, I think it's the time. They close the gates promptly.
Any other preferences? Mark, I think you said you wanted to hear about the history.
I'd want to hear, I don't see it listed here as things to topic, but the Western garden, the west facing garden, the sunny garden, has extraordinary, collection of plants. I'd be curious about who chose them and how they, how they chose the plants for that particular area, because it's so, perfect for a summer dry climate.
Well, that would be part of the history then. Okay, so we got 1 for Roman, 2 for witness trees, 1 for fragrance, 2 for history. Charlotte, the address is 7070 Rincon Road in Kensington. Does anybody have any other topics or announcements they want to mention?
Just a plug for anyone who's ready to get people back into their garden. Let me know if you'd like to host an event in your area and come have coffee in your garden and see what you've been up to. We're going to try to do that. We'll see how it goes.
Is the next meeting also on Zoom, or were you planning to get together?
Oh, that's a good question. April, there'll be another Zoom meeting. And I think May, we're thinking about doing a hybrid meeting, as I recall.
Okay.
We're hoping, and maybe a sale too. We have that grant again with I love the little plants that Kiamara propagated and got quite a, I got some. I almost wish I'd gotten more, but I'm looking forward to see what she has if we do a little sale or a auction or a drawing on in May. It'd be great to see those again.
Oh, yeah. And books. We have books to distribute, so to speak.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you all read the article about Western Hills Garden, that it's going to be opening up again? It's under new ownership, and the hortisexual Robin Pear in the hortisexual bulletin that she sent yesterday, email.
When are they opening?
They're hoping maybe May, they may open up again.
Okay. And then I have one more announcement. If you haven't renewed membership for this year, please go online and do that. Or if you have any questions about that, you can email me or Charlotte. What's the address for information?
Just go online in general, but if you want to actually send something to me personally, you can use the gardengurus@gmail.com.
Gardengurus@gmail.com.
Correct.
Thank you guys all for joining us, and we'll see you next month. Actually, the garden tour is right before the next meeting, so we'll see you at Mark's house.
Day before Easter.
Good night, everybody. Thanks again
Thank you, Ellen.
for coming.
Good night. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, good night.